Hi everybody, it's Jacqueline and I hope you're having a really great day today. So something I wanted to talk about today is creativity and neatness versus messiness. There is that stereotype that creative people are very messy and that if you're messy, you must be very creative. Personally, I consider myself a creative person, but personally, I like things to be neat. I find that if my surroundings are very messy, I can't find anything, if I don't have a clean work surface, it makes me feel very overwhelmed and kind of stressed out, and then I feel like I'm really much less productive. So for me, I really like to be neat. Now, maybe you're somebody who likes to have just all of your stuff all around you. And you know what, if that's you, that's fine. But you really have to figure out what works for you. So I would say just kind of start paying attention, not just in your sewing room, but in your surroundings in general, in the rest of your home, maybe in your office, maybe when you go to a friend's house. How do you feel in certain kinds of rooms? Do you like having a lot of stuff around? Does that make you feel kind of cozy and safe and snuggly? Or does it stress you out? For me, it stresses me out. Do you like things to be neat and know where they are and have lots of kind of open and clean spaces? Does that make you feel calmer? Just kind of know which kind of a person you are, because I think that's going to help you determine what is the best what are the best surroundings for you when you're trying to have creative time. So I know we talk a lot about like the messy sewing rooms, and sometimes we just have fun like posting photos of our sewing rooms, and they can be like this giant mess, and we think it's really funny. And some people might work well that way. For me, I wouldn't be able to work that way. I find that the messier my studio gets, the less creative I get, the less I actually want to spend time in there. And so my work areas do sometimes get, like if I have a lot of projects going on or deadlines, my work area does tend to get messy and kind of out of control, and I just end up like throwing things on the floor and everything. But there comes a point where I just can't work anymore and I really need to kind of put things away. So whether you are the messy type or the neat type, just be aware. I have a lot of people post sometimes that they've lost their quilting mojo or the creative mojo and they just can't get into working on projects at the moment. And I mean, maybe that has something to do with your workroom and your work area. I mean, can you find your projects? Can you find your supplies and everything? Or is it just more trouble than it's worth to walk into your sewing room and find what you're looking for? Do you end up just closing the door because you can't find anything and you feel like it's just not worth the hassle to find what you were working on? So that's just something to kind of think about today. And I think that whether you consider yourself a messy person or a neat person, it's really important to be able to find your stuff when you want to be creative. Let's face it, we're all very busy, and sometimes we have like 10 or 15 minutes of spare time in a whole day to do something for ourselves. What you don't want to do is spend that 10 or 15 minutes finding your stuff and figuring out what you were working on, and then by the time you find all your stuff and gather your supplies, it's, your time is up. You've got you've got an appointment to go to or something like that. So try to be, even if you're one of those messy people, try to keep your stuff organized enough that you can find things when you want to work on them. So I thought today I would just show you how I organize things. I like baskets. I have tons and tons of baskets. And the ones I'm going to show you today, I get these at Home Goods, and I've gotten these on a couple of different occasions. And if you know Home Goods, a lot of times it's kind of hit or miss. You don't know what they're going to have, or they might only have one or two of something. So I've been there a couple times when they've had these and they've only had like maybe 3 or 4, and I just grab whatever they have. But you can use whatever you like. You can use those plastic bins. I like these because they're you can stack them together, and they're made out of like this woven, it's like a nylon, these nylon straps that's woven together. So for example, and then I like to put a note on the front that tells me what's in here. So this one says BOM test. So what I was doing for this I was looking at our design for next year's block of the month, and I knew that we were going to need to do a test sample. And so I went through and I pulled a bunch of fabrics that I thought we would be using for the sample, and I also pulled a bunch of embroidery thread. That way, as soon as I'm ready to work on it, I know exactly what I was going to do. And I might include all kinds of notes in here. If I'm going to maybe hand off part of this to one of my sample makers, I'll put a note in there because I don't trust myself to remember tomorrow what I figured out today that I was going to do. So I make myself a lot of notes and put them in the basket, label the basket, then when I'm ready to work on it, everything is here. If I just had this pile of fabric, if I pulled the fabric for a project and just set it on my work table, next week I would not have a clue what I had pulled these supplies for. So the baskets are great. Label them, put in lots of notes. If you start a project, and put on a note on where you left off, you know, like bottom of page 10 or whatever, or I need more of the pink fabric, and if you remember where you got the fabric, maybe make a note for where you got it so you know you can go back and get more, that kind of thing. Anything that you think that you might want to know that will be helpful later on, put it on a note, stick it in the basket with your supplies. So this is great when you have half an hour to sew. You can go and you can pull this out and, you know, figure out, oh, I was on the half square triangles and this is what I need to do to continue working on this. Because you don't want to spend your 15 minutes figuring out where you left off on the project either. So this basket I have labeled orphan blocks for the Art of Home Club. So a lot of times I'm testing blocks for our club projects and I end up with extra blocks. And one of the things about our club is that we mix and match patterns. So I always have extra blocks made up. They might be embroidered, they might be appliqued, and that way in the future I can go and put them in a new project. So this is where I keep all of my club blocks. You could do this as well for orphan blocks. If you've got a bunch of half square triangles that you have left over from like making flying geese units or something, you might make a basket for half square triangle units, and then when you get a lot of them, you could put them together into a little project or something. So this is a good way to organize orphan blocks. Now this one says needs binding, and this note says needs binding and then embroidery. So I have a couple of different types of projects in here. So here's a block that I started. I didn't finish it, but I put a note on there with the embroidery floss color that I needed and, you know, where the pattern came from so I can go back and finish this. I didn't want to put the actual embroidery floss in here because I knew that I might want to use that color for a different project in the meantime because I didn't think I would get back to this one for quite a while. So I just put a note on here with the color, so when I'm ready, all I do is I go and I can pull that thread color off my rack and I can work on this one again. And that's actually something I did just this weekend. I had this little project, it's a little embroidery project that I had started probably well over a year ago, year and a half, 2 years ago. And I just didn't have time to finish it at the time, but I knew I would want to finish it at some point. And again, I didn't want to have all of my threads sitting in this basket because I might need them for another project in the meantime. So I made a note with all of the colors. I stuck that on there. And then this weekend, I wanted a quick project. I didn't have any new embroidery traced and ready to go. So I just went to my embroidery basket, found this, pulled out my thread colors, and I finished it this weekend. So had I not had my thread colors on here, had I not had everything together, this would still be sitting somewhere in a pile unfinished. But because I was organized and I could pull everything together really quick, I got it done in one evening. And so there's another UFO, you know, block that's done. And then I also put in this basket any little projects that I have, like this one just needs binding for a wall hanging. So I put this in here. Sometime I will probably go and just spend an afternoon just machine sewing all of my binding, and then I'll have them all piled up in the family room for evenings when I'm sitting in front of the TV and I want to be able to bind stuff. That's another thing. That's another way that you can really maximize your time is by doing similar tasks at the same time, kind of bundling your tasks. So if you have several like little projects like table runners. Now, obviously, if you have a big quilt that needs binding, it's not going to fit in one of these baskets. You could just put it in one of those big tubs, you know, those plastic tubs if you wanted to. But, you know, to maximize your time, you could have all your binding projects together in one place, and then, you know, cut and piece all of your binding at one time, machine stitch it on all at one time, and then have them all sitting there ready for the hand part when you get a chance. So just being a little bit organized, you're going to find that you get so much more productive. I know a lot of times we complain, we say we don't have time to be creative and to work on our projects, but I'm telling you, you just have to get a little bit organized, because what you don't want to do is be wasting time when you've got those precious moments figuring out what to work on next. Always have something ready to go. Have something ready by your machine to sew. Have something ready to do by hand. You know, on your chair next to the TV. Have something in a little bag by the door, so when you're going out to the car, you just pick it up and grab it. You don't have to, you know, search for your supplies. Have 2 pairs of scissors. You know, so if you lose a pair, you're not spending 2 hours finding your scissors. You just go grab another pair, because you know that first pair, it's going to show up eventually. So invest in just having some duplicate supplies. That's also going to save you some time. And you could have one by your chair and one in that little to-go bag, and everything is always ready to go whenever you get a few minutes and you want to be creative. So I hope that this helps you to be creative. I hope you find some time today. If your area is a mess and you feel like you need to clean it up and you've got 10 minutes, just spend 10 minutes working on one section, either next to your sewing machine or your cutting table, whatever. Get yourself a little bit organized and you'll feel a lot better and you'll be a lot more productive. So that's it. Have a great day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.